This is the concierge, sir.
And welcome, everybody. Welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and it's been a week. We're back. We lived a little bit of life, and got some stories. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about safety on the Strip. I know that's not always like the fun thing to talk about, but it's definitely the helpful thing to talk about when you're coming to Las Vegas, just to know kind of like where the places you should be, hanging out at, and the places that you shouldn't be. And overall, like, depending on if you're with a group or with your family, what is a safe, area in the city of Las Vegas. Also, I'll have a couple little stories for you that I ended up experiencing. Going to Fontainebleau again, I experienced Nowhere Bar, which is a sort of, it's not quite a secret, but it's a bar that's sort of hidden. But once you find it, it's definitely a really fun spot to check out. So that'll be coming up on this episode of Concierge Confidential. Okay, everybody, so let's go ahead and dive into it. So we're talking safety. So I know a lot of people are pretty experienced travelers and kind of understand that you want to be kind of where the lights are. That's kind of the thing. So sort of what's my thing I want to tell you guys? The basics are be where there are other people and be where there are lights. That's usually the safest bet for coming to Las Vegas. This is pertaining to like the Strip, Fremont Street, that kind of thing. But again, they're different on their own, of course. So if you're going to be on the Strip, typically Center Strip is probably the safest place on Las Vegas Boulevard. I'm talking places like the Cosmopolitan, the Aria, the Bellagio, Caesars, the Venetian, the Wynn. These areas, I know it's kind of sort of like a large section, but those areas are going to be pretty much where you want to hang if you want to be safe. And also inside of hotels. No matter the size or the type of hotel, being in a hotel is quite safe. You have a lot of cameras. There's typically lots of security guards. Obviously, if you're the problem, then you are the problem. But typically, if anything goes down in a casino, there's usually security guards pretty close by to take care of what goes on. So that's sort of just like the general sort of areas. A couple of little problem spots are when you have to walk outside for long distances where it can be quite dark. So what areas are we talking about there? So essentially, this is very much the north end of the Strip. Once you get to the north end, so we're talking in between like the Wynn and then Resorts World and then Fontainebleau, and then from Fontainebleau all the way to like Sahara and then the Stratosphere. Those areas have much longer distances you have to walk. Like the Wynn is actually not too bad. It's probably about a street light and a half to walk from the Encore to Resorts World. But still, these are where the distances get longer. Even also walking from Resorts World to Fontainebleau is not too bad. It's a little bit of a walk. I like to walk on the sides where it's kind of funny because in between Resorts World and Circus, there's a little McDonald's. There's also like a Metro like depot where they sometimes have cop cars parked, but there's not always cops in them. So take that as you will. But really, like if you're walking from places like Circus and Fontainebleau north to like Sahara and the Stratosphere, it is very, very dark. Not a lot of lights. Very sketchy people in that area, especially if you get to like Sahara and you cross over to like where the world's largest gift shop is. That is not a nice shopping center to hang out at. So I don't recommend walking there at nighttime. In the day, it's not too bad. But again, if you're walking in the daytime, there is no shade. So it is an extremely long walk and it's extremely hot. So those areas, the long stretches, you really want to minimize. So I would recommend, if you're going to be on the north end of the Strip, to know that you're going to be investing in some taxis and some Ubers to get back to like the center parts of the Strip. Also, do not ever think that you can walk. This is also just like a common sense thing. Can walk from the Strip to downtown. I for certain will tell you that it only says it's like 3.5 miles. It is not. It is much longer than that. It is very, very sketchy where all of the wedding chapels are on Las Vegas Boulevard. Lots of construction, hostels, lots of like really rundown motels. You don't want to be caught in that area. I understand like people want to go see the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, which that's in the absolute middle of nowhere. They've actually added little like shopping centers to that. That happened like maybe 6-7 years ago. Maybe 10 years ago. My goodness, I'm getting old. But they've added to there. But honestly, after the pawn shop, there's nothing around that area, and there's also like the bus station is really far away from there as well. Same thing, like taxis don't hang there, so you're gonna have to call an Uber. So just keep that in mind if you're going to the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. There is a place. It's actually sort of like an oasis in all of this, and it is the Arts District. The Arts District, I used to think was not a safe place, but they've really renovated a lot of that area of the Arts District, and it's actually a really popular place to walk up and down. Again, stay on the main strip, which is sort of Main Street there, and it's really well lit. It looks beautiful. They've really done a lot with that area, and it's really where a lot of locals like to hang. It's usually lots of locals that are here with like groups of friends. They want to go out. They're meeting up after work. Very, very popular space to meet lots of locals is on Main. You have Cervezas. You also get a barbecue restaurant there. They have something tailgate. It's like a country bar. They also have Esther's Kitchen, which is brand new in that space. Super, super popular. People actually really like to go there, and it looks really good on the inside. And they do sort of like New American with a little bit of Italian influences, and it's really, really popular. But really, really popular on the weekends. It's also where we have First Friday, which is a huge sort of block party event where they shut down that area. And they have art exhibitions, they have food, drinks, all that good stuff. So that place is quite popular. But again, lots of locals. And again, you want to stay on the main drive because once you get sort of like to the edges of the Arts District, it gets very dark. There are, a lot of homeless people on that, in that area. You also get a lot of, different things that's going on. And I do not recommend you want to be around any of that. When it comes to Fremont Street certainly depends on what time of the day or night you're there. In the daytime, very harmless. It's quite bright. As long as you stay on just Fremont Street itself under the canopy, you will be completely fine. When it gets to the evening time, also pretty good. Like I would say you could take kids there until probably like maybe 7, maybe 8 o'clock is kind of pushing it. But just know if you do take kids to Fremont Street, there's quite a bit of nudity out there for a lot of the workers and just really weird stuff going on Fremont Street. But people love to see the lights, and that's the reason you came to Las Vegas is to see the neon lights. And if you are here to see them, then you have to stay out past dark. So Fremont Street is fine, but I really don't recommend, and this is going to sound really ridiculous, going to Fremont on the weekends. It's not my vibe. I personally don't feel safe on Fremont Street when there's so many people. This is sort of like where my argument sort of goes back on itself, where Fremont Street is like, it's cool to be with a bunch of other people and you think that's safe, but then it becomes where we have too many people in a closed space where then I don't believe it's safe. So I'm really worried about like pickpockets and, that kind of thing. And, the other thing is that you are not always focused when you're walking on Fremont Street because you're looking at the signs, you're looking at the big giant screen above you, understandably so. You're watching bands, it's very loud. You can't really hear people like sort of coming up behind you. So it's a little bit anxiety driven for some people. So I don't always like being on Fremont Street for like when they have big events like New Year's Eve. Hell no. When they have free concerts, it gets very busy. They've stepped up security quite a bit. So they actually make you walk through a metal detector when you go to the like entrances of the Fremont experience, which people always ask, like, that's the thing. It is. There are entrances that you can come in and out of on Fremont Street, and that's where they set up the metal detectors. So, anyways, most of Fremont is quite safe. I would say like places like Circa, the Golden Nugget are completely fine. Binion's actually isn't too bad either. I don't hang a lot inside of the Four Queens or the Fremont Hotel, but they seem okay. But again, it gets a little seedier as you get, out of underneath the canopy. The only exception being East Fremont Street, which is where you have lots of locals. It's sort of the normal thing that you get. You get a lot of like local fights, which is kind of a weird thing, but nowhere more, not more than what you would get at like a local bar where you live. So totally safe. I would say the safety net for you walking on Fremont Street is probably up until about the El Cortez. Anything past the El Cortez, I do not recommend. I do know that they have like a restaurant just past El Cortez, but I mean, El Cortez really is like, to me, the cutoff point of where I want to be after dark in that area. So this is the kind of a funny thing, is that people always like are looking for the non-touristy things. And the thing is that you are a tourist, though. So it's okay to have to be doing touristy things in the touristy areas. You don't want to be stuck in parts of town that you don't know and then trying to figure out, like, hey, is this cool or not cool? Like, it's a really thin line between, like, super, like, hipster and being super dangerous. So just for any city, that's actually a really good sort of just thought to have, is that, you know what? I have a car. I'm good. I feel comfortable. It's early enough in the day. This place looks not as bad. I'll try it out. So you have to use your judgment. If you're a tourist, guys, like, you don't have to be going into Chinatown, like deep Chinatown, which I have to say, Chinatown actually here is not too bad. Again, long stretches. It's very dark. You might find, a friend working on the street, but I don't say like you have to go to Chinatown like for good Chinese food. You can, but hopefully you're with somebody who knows what they're doing, and that helps. But again, cool thing about Chinatown here is that it's not just Chinese food. It's actually a lot. They have like Partage, which is a French restaurant, and they have Mas Por Favor, which is a Mexican restaurant that has like, a speakeasy inside of it. But again, just up to you. So let's get to safety inside of the hotels. So talking about safety inside of the properties, a lot of times when it comes to safety, it's what do you do in your rooms? So the thing with rooms, I think people should know this, is that I think our Vegas hotel rooms are pretty secure. Living and working as a concierge, people do have keys to your room. Again, this is from the hotel side, like we all have master keys, but we don't like pass them out to everybody. So just to like sort of give you, pause and, give you at ease, is we had one master key for the entire concierge department. So it wasn't like we're just walking around with our own keys. So that's for a lot of departments. Like, sometimes departments don't need keys. Front desk obviously can make keys, so that's an exception. But like concierge, for example, like if we had to go do a room setup, and there were actually maybe 2 or 3 of us that were going up to do room setups, we could only take one key, or we'd have to get a key from the front desk. So it isn't like people are just walking around with your keys. Obviously, housekeeping has keys, security has keys for your room, but I would say that we're quite responsible with how we utilize that. And one way of, taking care of that is deadbolting the door. Deadbolting when you are inside of the hotel room, whether you're awake or asleep or taking a nap, is always a really good idea, because the keys will unlock the regular lock for the room, but they obviously cannot unlock the deadbolt or the extra little clasp on the top that will also stop the door. So deadbolt is probably the most important key thing to lock inside of your room. I think most people know that, but I think it's important to reiterate. That is the one of the most secure ways, just naturally, to lock your door. I also recommend that you do not leave jewelry or money or things of that nature just out. Again, we're not trying to steal stuff. That's not a thing that people do at all, especially in Las Vegas. But I mean, of course, there's terrible people in the world, but I always recommend that you hide it someplace that that it's there and it's really hard to get to. Obviously, you can hide it in a safe, and safes are actually pretty secure in hotels. Like, you'll always find these hacks of don't do this because it's in a hotel. If you leave something in your safe, for example, and say, hey, I think I left my watch in the safe. It is locked for you. We typically will go in and unlock these things. Like we'll check and see like, oh, that's locked. If you're the security. So security are the only ones who have access to that. And they actually keep a whole list of lost and found items. I think it's, important to note when you walk in, always just check the safe to see that it's, works. Make sure there's nothing in it, hopefully not. And then you can go about your day because it is reset for every new guest that comes in. So you can leave stuff in there. I would say that's pretty secure. Like you can leave your passports, which people love to do. You can also leave money, of course. That's usually a nice place to leave it as well. That's what happens. So in terms of like security, it's pretty safe. The thing is that if you ever ask for security to your room, it can sometimes take a while. Especially if you're loud. Being loud is a number one way to get people to go to your hotel room. It's just very, very common. But again, just make sure you lock your doors. It's very, very important. And again, research where you're going to be going. That's really, really important. Know if you're going to need a taxi, an Uber, a Lyft, or whatever. That will always help. Just because I don't want you getting stuck and stranded somewhere where you can't go. Another thing, if you are walking through the casino, you see things that other people don't. So let's keep that in mind. Just let people know what's going on. You can always let, concierge, front desk, security is always a good place if you see anything funky going on. But another thing I wanted to talk about, because this always comes up, is prostitutes. People always are wondering about prostitutes. So, one, it is not legal in the county of Clark County, which is the one that Las Vegas is in. So do not try to employ a hooker. Number two, typically, how do you spot a hooker is always a good one. I'm not saying this for you to find one. I'm just saying this so you understand and know the signs. Typically, they do like to hang around like the major central bars inside of casinos because it's a very easy place to find people. Usually if you're, an amateur traveler to Las Vegas and you're single or just alone, you typically go to the bar in the middle because that's where the most people watching is. That is also where you will find the most prostitutes on the Las Vegas Strip or at those bars. Target rich environment is what we like to call it. So Blue Bar, Chandelier Bar. There's another bar. Forgetting at the moment. But those are good examples. Also, like what hotels have what's it? Parasol Up, which is at the Wynn. Oh my goodness. That place is prostitute central. But again, just be nice, be courteous. You don't have to buy them drinks. That's not a thing. People do it, but like you don't do it. But again, just be safe. I would not recommend going anywhere with them, but if you do choose to employ one, which you should not, never leave the property with an escort. Always be safe. But again, this is just from like secondhand accounts. I've actually had a coworker who he had a big win inside of a casino, and then he ended up leaving and then this girl walked up to him, and they ended up leaving the property together because they thought it was sort of like a mutual sort of connection, and they ended up getting in a car. When he got into the car, they started driving away. And as they were driving away, which I believe she was driving and he was slightly intoxicated, there was a gentleman in the back seat that had a gun and actually, threatened this person, and they took his money, they robbed him, and then left him out like somewhere. So it's very scary. We don't want that to happen. It's it's real life. It happens. It's a really sad story. He's okay though, but again, that's like things that can happen. So that's why it's important to like, if you want to flirt, if you want to talk to them, I understand you come to Vegas, you're alone. Do not employ one. Just don't. But hey, I'm not here to judge. Do your thing. How do you spot them? They're usually alone. This is sort of a stereotype, but women do not come to Las Vegas alone if they're on vacation. A lot of women come to Las Vegas for work, like actual work, like, maybe engineers or teachers or whatever. They don't usually travel alone. It's very, very rare, unless they're here for work. Women travel for work alone all the time in Las Vegas. And you can usually tell. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. I've actually met a lot of, single people or women by themselves in Las Vegas. Although, like, big readers. Like, really weird. Like, I don't read, and I understand. Like, you're in Vegas. You're, like, traveling alone. How do you fill the time? And, like, I've seen women just whip out whole books to read, like, at bars. It's so weird. I'm sorry. Like, there's music going on. There's people walking around. And you're going to read a book? What is that? It just always throws me off. I never understand how to take that. So, hey, that's cool. But what's the difference? I'm a dude and I'm on my phone. I'm scrolling through reading Twitter. Like, who makes the rules here is what I'm trying to say. So, that's one thing. I've talked to a prostitute before, and it was not because I knew that she was a prostitute. You're just kind of sitting there, and this is sort of the thing that happens to me because I go out to bars alone. And you're just kind of like sitting there, and you get bored. Like, you are watching like a piano player, which is, that's fun, and you're drinking and you're talking. I've talked to like the bartender's ears off at some point. And then like you'll just get somebody, like you'll say one thing, like one word, and they catch it and they start a conversation with you, and then you just start talking. And I'm really good at like talking, but always like kind of ending the conversation with an answer without being rude. But it's sometimes fun. Just like, hey, what are you doing in town? Oh, I'm doing this. And like, you kind of just go with your stories, and that's really fun. I used to make up stories. I don't make up stories as much as I used to, just because I give them like my card, and then, usually they'll follow the pod or whatever. So can't make up stories. Like, I would make up stories like, hey, like, my name is Javier, and I'm, what do I do? I'm traveling from Arizona, and I do this type of job. And then you go from there. And then it's just sort of a fun just conversation. I don't do that anymore, though. Unfortunately, don't do that anymore. Really fun, though. But as I said, like, have your fun, talk, flirt. It's cool. But don't go anywhere with them. They're one time, another story. So I was actually standing in front of the concierge desk over at MGM Grand. And when I look over at the lobby bar, target-rich environment for hookers. It's funny because we would always see them walking out at 8 o'clock in the morning at MGM where we went, but they're going to the Motel 6. But anyways, so you kind of hear like a rumbling or a commotion over at the bar, and all you see is this woman grabbing like the backside of a beer bottle and then smashing it on top of this guy's head. Like, no idea what was going on. I don't know if he didn't pay her. I don't know if like he offended her somehow. But this was all like 9:30 in the morning, which was a fantastic way to start the day. So just be careful. It happens. It's real slick. Last time I'll talk about this is that, so one time I was actually like 20, and I was sitting at the bar with my dad and my brother at Caesar's Palace, the Americana, Americano bar. Also Caesar's Palace, lots of hookers. We were just eating breakfast, and this woman was eating alone and started a conversation, and she had to be like, in her 30s or 40s, most likely 40s. And as I was talking to her, she was just saying, yeah, I get this guy to like, he pays me to come out here and like, whatever. And I was so inexperienced at the time. I was like, oh, that's cool that he does that. You guys just must hang out and like, go to shows and dinners. Didn't know there's a whole like another aspect to all that. So, little naive, but I was like, what's going on? And then I think my brother and my dad caught on like way later, and were like, they didn't tell me till like years later that, yeah, I think that girl was working you a little bit. And I was like, oh, I had no idea, but nothing happened. So sometimes it's fun stories. Sometimes you get fun stories out of it. But again, just be safe. That's always so important. Be safe. Make sure your phone is charged. It's the most important thing is make sure your phone is charged. I don't recommend just throw on both your headphones and walk down the strip because you have to be alert of what's going on. One headphone is fine. I've done that before. It's totally cool, especially when you're stopping and watching things. Like if you're watching the Bellagio fountains, or if you're stopping and watching, can't do the volcano anymore, stopping and watching the Fremont Street Experience. Be very aware of where all your items are. Front pockets is good. Back pockets, it's so easy for people to pickpocket you in Las Vegas. It's probably one of the most popular places for pickpockets. Also, the bridges can sometimes be the most dangerous places. Used to have a lot more sort of vagrancy and stuff on the bridges on the strip, but due to a couple new laws that were passed, they don't really have those anymore. So still just be vigilant of when you're walking around. It's really, really important in times of day. Nothing good ever happens at 4 o'clock in Las Vegas. 3 o'clock, The funny thing is people think Vegas is just on all the time. And the thing is Vegas, for the most part, kind of closes down at 2 o'clock. After 2 o'clock, nothing's open except nightclubs. And even those things are probably going to sort of die out around 3, 4 o'clock. Or most likely 3. So again, be as late as you want. You don't need to see the sun come up, although people love to do it. So just keep an eye on your things. Oh, another thing. So if you ever go to the pool, definitely rent a locker. Don't just pretend that hey, I'm going to find this thing and I'll be fine. I would say that the peace of mind of just having a locker to put your things in, whether it's $15 or $25, do it. It will definitely pay yourself off in peace of mind. It's really nice. It's also really funny if you leave your stuff in the lockers at the end of the day, they will take them out and they unload them every single day. They have to unload the lockers at the pool. So there you do. So that was some of your safety stuff for visiting Las Vegas. Hopefully it was a little bit helpful. Let's actually take a quick break and then I'll come back and give you a quick story.
May I tell you a story?
Okie dokie, we're back with some stories. So, I ended up going to the Nowhere Bar, which was pretty fun. I believe it was the musical director who actually was the musical director for the Oscars last year, and that's cool. And he brought up a bunch of his friends, and they all did different songs and sets and stuff. Place is cool. It's not bad. It's really good for groups. If you're here with a group, it's a really fun experience. And especially if you want sort of an old school Vegas vibe, it is. It's kind of a weird lounge, to be honest. When you go, it has all these couches and all these weird things. It has a pool table, and it's cool. If you're going for that smoky, Frank Sinatra era Ocean's 11 vibe. But it's very, very quiet. So this is not going to be let's get turned up. At least the night that I went was not a let's get turned up night. Although I've seen times where they have a musical performer where the night does get going. It looks like the music actually starts, I believe, around 9 o'clock. Yeah, I believe it was 9, I believe is what she said. So 9 o'clock, and it goes until 1. They have 2 seatings and whatever. So they don't have food in there. So no food, from what I gathered. The bar menu itself is fine. It's okay. And also, it was a Saturday night when I went, so they actually took the chairs out from where the bar was, which was fine. I don't mind standing, but it was weird. They also brought out this chair for this guy who was part of the Poodle Club, which is upstairs. Very nice guy. I talked to him. We talked about the property. A couple things might be changing in terms of restaurants. Rumor has it, Q, which is the restaurant when you walk in, may not be there very long. So it actually was a kind of a fun little insider tip from somebody who would know. So who knows? You can quote me on it if you want to, just breaking news over here. But that's what I thought. But he was really cool. And then I also, watched the show. And then, of course, met some people. There was this woman who was standing next to me, and then I said hello, and then she had a husband, and we had a whole conversation. Very, very nice people. But the reason I wanted to bring this up was the first time in my 31 years of life This includes all the times when I was a kid. I sent a drink back. And you guys know me. You know me. I've had lots of drinks in Las Vegas, lots of bars, lots of weird stuff that I didn't like, but I still finished it. This was the first time I was like, no, you need to take this back. I am not eating this. I'm not drinking this thing. I am not doing it. So it was one of their signature cocktails, and it had whiskey, and it also had, oh my goodness, a bunch of other like weird things. But I said, hey, I'll try it. It was sort of served on the rocks and whatever. So it's a whiskey drink. Semi-excited to try it out. I was like, hey, let's try out this cool drink. And this is when I knew it was going to be bad. She grabbed the pre-mixed drink and just poured it into the glass with the ice in it and said, boom, cocktail. And it was darker than the usual old fashions that I have. Once it came out, I knew I was not going to like it. Took 3 sips, and I was like already contemplating, okay, how am I going to justify I don't want any more of this drink? So she like was doing stuff and whatever, and I had to lean over and I said, I don't really like this drink. Can I get a different one? And then I was very nervous asking this, but yeah, she just grabbed the cocktail glasses and poured the drink out, and we were ready to go for another one. So pretty funny how she reacted. It was just like so nonchalant. But this is the thing. Everybody who owns a bar or a restaurant or anything, like, if it's your signature cocktail, we should not be seeing you just pour it out of like a pre-mixed like container into a cocktail. There are some things, like I've been to Azul, which they had a cocktail that was like infused with like whatever it was, and it was watermelon. That takes time. So like it's a thing. But again, it's just like, man, that drink was so bad. I had to call my mom after, and I was like, Mom, I sent a drink back, which I felt very nervous about. But again, I mean, at the time, I wanted something specific, and I did not get it, and I was very disappointed. But other than that, the Nowhere Lounge is super, super fun. Would highly recommend it to anybody visiting over at the Fontainebleau. So yeah, check it out. Take a date. It's not too bad. I'm also conflicted because coming up in a month is going to be the Eagles on the 12th. The reason I remember that is because I was just sort of surfing through the net. I know it's a very age reference, but I was just searching through, and then I saw my boy Hans Zimmer, who's performing at the Resorts World, sold out show, has now put on sale tickets for his show at T-Mobile Arena on October 12th. So please, people who are listening to this, do not go to that show, because I still want to have tickets for when I'm ready to see if I can buy those tickets. So it's really coming down to it, just because I just found this out. I have tickets with my parents, who graciously bought the tickets, to go see the Eagles at the Sphere. The Eagles do not have Glenn Frey right now, because he passed away. So what are we getting? Like, what are we getting from that? But like the Eagles are so good though, so then you're like, man, I really want to see them both, because I want to see Hans Zimmer as well. I just love movies. Like, you guys can check out my TikTok page, which is at Films with Brian. But man, I'm so conflicted because I want to go see the Hans Zimmer experience, but I also like want to see my parents and go to the Sphere. So highly conflicted. I really need some help figuring out what to do with that. But anyways, so this pod already went long. I appreciate you guys for listening this entire time, but that's my conflicted thoughts of my parents coming to town. So anyways, thank you so much for listening. Check us out on our social channels, Concierge Confidential _LV, at Keys to Vegas on TikTok, as well as Twitter. And again, you can follow me, Brian _Ortega26, for all of your Vegas needs. So again, if you see me out in town, come say hello. I appreciate it. And remember, keep it confidential.